Welcome to the 62nd edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by Scott Beck. Of course, we're going to talk NWCA National Duals, January 9th and 10th, Cedar Falls, Iowa at the Unidome. Hope you are there in person. If not, you can watch live on FloWrestling. We'll get into all of that. There's an NAI division. There's an NCAA All-Women's division, all divisions. And then there's for the first time, a Division III division for the National Duals. But first, we have to talk about Valiant Prep. Look what's happening there right now. These girls are voting with their actions. Right now, you have 5 Who's Number One participants at Valiant Prep, which is a freestyle-only high school. Everest Lydecker, Reagan Mathers, Morgan Lucio have been there, and recently Eve Skrocki and Bella Manno are now at Valiant Prep. You have a daughter there, Scott. What are your thoughts on this?
Maintain it's a special place. Right now you have, 5 of the 24 Who's Number One participants. I don't think any other school, SEM has 2. I think nobody else has more than 1. I think Eve Skrocki and Bella Manno are starting first day of class, I think is today, I believe. I think potentially, from what I've heard talking to people, there's other athletes that are exploring it as well. And, depending on feedback and timing, would be interested. I know that, Eve was planning on starting next year and just went there and kind of spent some time and just said, I need to do this immediately. If I want to pursue my dreams. It's a special place. Then you have the seniors. You have, obviously, Helen's in that room. Michaela's in the room. Kayla Miracle's a math teacher and the coach. And at any moment, a bunch of fighters or other, athletes, can pop in. And, it's a very special place of like-minded athletes that want to love the sport, want to get better. And I don't know more to say. I just think anybody that goes there really just can see the vibe, with Coach Larkin and Coach, Angel Cejudo. And it's going to keep getting better. And more athletes are going to keep coming, and I think there's demand for the product.
And my understanding is that it is Angel Cejudo that is guiding the ship. He's the one that is creating the development. He is the mastermind behind the developmental process. Is that correct?
I think so, but I think, Coach Larkin's very involved, and I think, Coach, it's Angel's baby, but I think there's a lot of people behind it, and I think the tone is set with Angel, and I think there's just tremendous respect across the board by the athletes and the other coaches. And this was a vision. Yeah. And I think there's a need for it. And it's just going to keep getting better and feed on itself. And I think the biggest thing, though, is that everybody there wrestles in the high school. And I think it's only going to, and I think it's a very unique environment, where it's about respect, it's about love of wrestling, and nobody's forcing the people. You can go there in the morning before school, there's athletes in the room, there's athletes after, people stay after practice. I think everybody there loves it, is on the same page, and I think it's really amazing.
With that, it's interesting because it seems like Valiant Prep, Wyoming Seminary, and some of these other schools that are freestyle only, they're living on a different women's wrestling planet, because you go to these local high schools, and I love what they're developing. We've talked about this, how you have this mentality of the prep high school program where you get excited and you're around your teammates, and we don't want that to go away. But when you are good and when you are pursuing that highest level, you have to create every inch and ounce. And I think that's what the 2 most recent with Bella and Eve, that's what they're saying, is that we need this in order to get to the next level.
Yeah, it's just you need the partners, you need the intensity. They also have a bunch of boys, and the boys don't just wrestle freestyle. The emphasis is freestyle, but these guys want to get college scholarships, so they have to wrestle folk style. So, like, both Larkin boys are wrestling at ASU, and they're ranked top 3 or 4 or whatever, and they'll be contending for national titles. But I think, with the girls, they don't need to wrestle folk style, right? So, they're in the room, and the boys will wrestle with them, under the direction of the male coaches. But I just think, listen, Eve Skrocki came from, big game in Iowa, and that's a great club, right? Phenomenal club, and with great athletes. But I think it's about the partners now, and just the emphasis, and the way the room is kind of, kind of the tone is set, at the top, and I think there's a demand for it, and I don't know what's going on. It seems to me like Sem's down, taking a little bit. There's some stuff going on. There's been some coaching changes. I don't know all the nuances. I'm looking into it. I'm gonna have a call with some people this week probably and try to get some more information. But there is demand for high level wrestling rooms, for women for sure.
There's also a demand for a dual meet tournament that matters, and we have one coming up this weekend, the NWCA National Duals, my Super Bowl. I think no matter what you say, this is who will be the team champion in each of the divisions, the All-Division, NCAA, the NAI, and the Division 3. And there is also the statement with Division 3 having its own tournament. It's expected that Division 3 will split off from Division 1 and 2, which are the athletic scholarship programs. I would think by 2027 season is what I'm hearing, or at least exploring it at that point. So having that, it's interesting when you look at some of the depth and the talent in the D3 national duels. There are good wrestlers competing that, probably highlighted by Lexi Janiak of Aurora. You have Wartburg, you have Simpson as the top 1 and 2 seeds. Wartburg, Simpson showdown would be great for this because they're both in the state of Iowa. Western New England, Elmira, Aurora, Shriner, Adrian, and Eastern. That rounds out the top 8 seeds, and there's some quality wrestlers on all of those. So it has been neat to see how Division 3 has garnered a lot of interest, and you see some high-level girls in these Division 3 programs, Scott.
Yeah, you definitely have very good schools in the Division 3 bracket. I mean, the one interesting thing to me is, in this tournament, we'll get into it as we dissect. North Central will be competing in the Division 1 tournament, not in a separate Division 3. But I think that, they're obviously competitive enough and wanted to do that. I guess they were given a choice, and they will be the number 4 seed, I believe, in the bigger tournament. But yeah, this is the direction everything's heading. It's going to be splitting off because the landscape needs to be, equitable. And as you and I both say, this is really the best team. As we're both big fans of dual meets. So I'm excited for the event. You're going to be there, and I think it should be phenomenal.
When you look at the seeding, and we'll just go through the top 8 seeds for the NCAA All-Division. Iowa, of course, number 1. McKendree, number 2. Grand Valley State, a second-year program, was not here last year because they were the first-year program. They finished 4th at the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships in 2025. They are the 3 seed. North Central is the 4 seed. King, the 5 seed. Presbyterian, the 6. Colorado Mesa, the 7, and Fort Hays State, who is coming on strong, doing a great job, is the 8. Interesting in the quarterfinals, you have North Central and potentially King if everything goes according to the seeds, which I think it will. That's an interesting quarterfinal match because you saw a couple years ago where it was King and North Central in the finals. King, of course, lost Jason Mormon from its program, and now you have a new coach in Bret Fry in his first season. I think this will be a good test. We'll see what King has to offer as far as just coming through and rebuilding that program. But credit to Bret Fry. I would say this about any coach when you're taking over a program and you are a first-time college head coach is we will see. And I think so far with Bret Fry, he has passed the test. He has done a good job bringing that program back to life. That could have easily fallen off the map. He's gotten good recruits in there. So I give him high marks for making sure that program is relevant. So that was the right hire for King.
Yeah, 100%. He's doing a great job so far, and I think, like to your point, it's very easy for a program to collapse. He lost people, he lost transfers. It's hard to recruit. I think at the very least, which is he's done way more than this. He's definitely stabilized the program, and I think he's kind of made a statement that we are here. We're not giving up on the program. Coach Mormon left, but we believe in wrestling, and we support the program, and he's done an amazing job so far. So that is quarterfinal. It's going to be interesting to ultimately see, what lineup Iowa puts out. Let's say everything goes chalk. Okay. So let's say, if we get an Iowa McKendree final to see what those lineups look like, McKendree will have a very good lineup, and this should be interesting to see, where Coach Garcia puts out, his ideally, if he makes it to the finals, I think he's going to go for it and put out his best lineup.
I think that's probably the one where you circle and say what will happen, because we've been excited about that all season. We know that McKendree has a loaded team. We know that Iowa has a loaded team. And when you go top to bottom, just every matchup is fascinating. Now, where Iowa has an advantage is they have two guaranteed wins. 160, Kennedy Blades will win. And I'm assuming this will be the first time that we see Kylie Welker in the lineup. She has not been in the lineup for the college season so far. She's been busy over the summer. It's a good break that she needs. You just can't put that many miles on the tires, especially early on in the season. But when you break it down and you look at this, all matchups are exciting, and you don't know who they're going to put out. Of course, Iowa has 3 quality wrestlers at 103, and McKendree has 2 quality wrestlers at 103. So are you going to have Val Solorio, Sterling Diaz, Rhian Murphy for Iowa? Val Solorio, number 1 right now, against number 2, Heather Curl or Katie Valdez. That's going to kick it off. And Scott, that will set the tone if that happens. We're talking way down the line. A lot of things have to happen before we get to that. That will really set the tone on what happens for both teams.
Yeah, and other than those hammers you alluded to, senior world Olympic medalists, there's going to be pretty much top 5 people competing against each other. Really, in most cases, top 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 people, or 2 and 3 people competing all the way up to 138. So 145. I mean, there's a lot of really good matchups, and when you're looking at 1s versus 2s or 2s versus 3s or 1s versus 3s. With the exception of these absolute hammers, meaning Blades and Welker, a lot of those matches are just utter toss-ups and can go different ways. So I think it's going to really come down to, who wins the close matches. Are bonus points involved? Or, you could have situations where somebody's winning a match and gets, stuck. Things like that. I mean, getting a point if you are getting, beat up. Are you going to get your point if you get tech or decision? So this is going to be really exciting. I mean, I don't want to just put them both in the finals, but I think on paper that probably goes chalk, but we'll see.
We will see, and it's the first 3 that are off the charts fascinating, because 110, you have Nyla Valencia, presumably Ava Bayless is a returning national champion, so she could possibly be in the lineup. But Gabby Tedesco is a returning national finalist who's moved up to 110. That will be a rematch of the Missouri Valley Open that was won in the final seconds by Tedesco. Valencia was winning up until the end, so that is a rematch. And then you have 117. You have a rematch of the consolation semifinals at the National Women's Wrestling Championships. Brianna Gonzalez, who won the U.S. Open, made it to Final X, had a brilliant tournament at the U.S. Open going against Yu Sakamoto, who is a transfer from Northern Michigan, a U23 world champion at 117. You look at those, that first 3, if we get those, that is the price of admission right there, those 3 matches.
Oh, yeah. And then there's going to be some, I want to see a Carly Brooks, Skosnicki or Kim Guerin match, I mean, obviously Kim Guerin's a 4-time national champ. I don't know if there's going to be a first competition or not, at 31. At 38, Jaffe versus Sky Reeland, if that match happens, is, a 3 versus 1. I mean, there is, and then, Reese Laramendi is the number 1 rank, potentially wrestling Alexis Gomez, who's a 2. I mean, there's a lot I want to see, especially those lightweights. That's really going to set the tone, as you said. And they're all really good. And there's different permutations that could potentially wrestle. So we'll see what happens. The other thing in a tournament like this is, you want to see everybody healthy and rested. So in some of the earlier rounds, we may not see some of these names, and Iowa may save them, and McKendree may save them. So we don't know what the exact landscape is going to be. Shelby Moore, Callie Lang, you'd have to obviously, solid favorite Shelby Moore, but Callie Lang's pretty scrappy, so, as a 5th ranked person. So this is going to be interesting, and I think a lot of the early round matches are going to be interesting, just in terms of matchups of different athletes on different teams.
And then the potential of the W Cap girls coming in. We haven't seen them all season. You have Tristan Kelly and Jasmine Robinson. Both are high level. Tristan Kelly, a returning national champion at 207 pounds. Will she meet her finals opponent in JC Feller? JC Feller, four-time national finalist, going to try to win for the first time this season. So you might have that rematch. So just up and down the line, if we get that in the finals, I think it's going to go chalk just based on what you have for lineup and depth on both sides of those teams. I mean, both are just powerhouse teams. I think there's just so many fascinating things. And you brought it up is that when you look back historically at those finals matches, every single point, every situation absolutely matters in how you win this tournament. Go back to Ava Bayless coming back and beating Jaslyn Gallegos 5-5, and then they end up winning 21-20 over North Central in the 2024 national. You can go to the 2020 national duels where you can break it down and look at things. You can say Carla Godinez Gonzalez beat Felicity Taylor 8-0, and McKendree won that tournament 19-19 on tiebreakers. But if Godinez Gonzalez gets that 10-0 tech, she gets an additional point for her team. So there's just little things like that all the time where
the
one
stalling call in that one match. I mean, there's just been a lot of shot clock point that determined pretty much a duels almost. I mean,
it did.
And yeah, it did. I mean, you never know how things would have worked out, but yeah. I mean, then you have, the Life Menlo match in 2024 in the finals of 25-21, win by Life. I mean, the one thing that I hate to put too much pressure on everybody, but I'm going to say it. We are guaranteed to have some action and some close matches and battles. I mean, that's what we've seen, that these events and these dual meets have lived up to expectations. And I'm going to say we're going to get that this year as well. We're going to get some great matches and some really exciting stuff. And I think it's going to be a great event.
Yeah, and then even Grand Valley State and Presbyterian. Presbyterian has a solid team. That would be a quarterfinal matchup. So if you go to chalk, it will be Iowa and North Central in the semis, and the McKendree and Grand Valley State in the semifinals. And I wouldn't want to overlook how exciting that Grand Valley State versus McKendree duel will be. I mean, you look at the hammers they have with Rihanna Sagoon is good. You have Sage Mortimer, we've talked about. You have Katie Lang, who's good. I mean, Sabrina. Glasgow, you could just go down the line. So again,
and we've learned never to underestimate North Central in these events either, even though on paper they're down relative to, but I don't think you can I think they show up at these events.
They do.
And the fans show up.
The fans show up, and then also the consolation on the backside, whoever comes back. I think those Consi semis are going to be just as fascinating because of what some of the matchups will be. So it's a special event. NAIA aside, you have Life University going for its fourth championship in 5 seasons. They've just really owned this event. So Ashley Flavin has 3 already. She's going to get 3 in a row at this point. And I think just the interesting one there could be the potential of William Penn against Life University in the semifinals. Now, will William Penn have its Nigerian Olympian hammers in the lineup? The Nigerian World Team Trials are on January 6th, so will they be able to fly back, get into Cedar Falls, Iowa, and be there for that? But I've wanted to see this William Penn Life duel season long because they just keep adding. And I mean, William Penn is an absolute contender for this NAIA championship. And then you have Providence, you have Grandview, you just go down the line there. So NAIA side's going to be just as exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to need some of their hammers. Hopefully they'll make it back. I mean, obviously, the way we perceive international wrestling, as much as we love national duels, the most important thing is for these athletes to make the world teams, right? And that's a priority, but I think they will most likely do everything possible to make it back, and hopefully they will. And that would make that a pretty spicy dual meet if it materializes.
And you talked about it earlier. It's all about who you use and what your value on this event is. And if you know you have it in hand, maybe you go with someone else to be able to put them on a pitch count so that someone's rested. Now, Iowa definitely has the luxury. So if I had to make a prediction with an Iowa or a McKendree or North Central or even Grand Valley State to some level, I think they won't use all their hammers maybe early in those rounds, that they know that they want to save someone, especially when you know you have two good options and Iowa has multiple options. So Katya Osteen right now is ranked number 3 in the country. She is back up to Kylie Welker, who is clearly number 1. So when you have that option, where are you going to put Katya Osteen in the fold at 180?
Yeah, it's pretty, the dilemmas are, a lot in some cases, and some there's not a lot, because normally you'd be in a situation where you have these dual meet tournaments and good teams where to make something happen, maybe you think about bumping somebody up or, cutting somebody down. But in this case, these lineups, and this is a tribute to women's wrestling right now, these lineups are pretty solid top to bottom. So it's not like you're required to even think in many cases bump, because you'd be bumping somebody into another hammer, another top 3 person. So on these really good teams, I mean, there really are not really major gaps in these lineups, which is amazing that we're having that discussion. And listen, we look back, years ago when we talked about this, went back and talked about the results. You had some teams like a Simon Fraser or a Campbellsville where you had, or King, obviously, where you had top to bottom solid lineups, but there was only 2 or 3 great teams then, or one in many cases. Now you have teams in different divisions that are having solid lineups top to bottom. So that's just another, fly in the ointment of women's wrestling. It's come a long way, and it's just, the product is great. These teams have depth. There aren't that many gaps, even on, teams that are in the 6 to 8 area. I mean, a solid lineup top to bottom.
And then when we're talking about the potential quarterfinal matchup between King and North Central, 207 pounds. What if it comes down to the final match and you have Tirza Two Teeth, who would presumably be the top choice for North Central, going against Eliana Bomarito, who is a thrower. And so what if they're down by 4 and Bomarito knows that she needs 5 and she can go out and get it and she has it in her arsenal? So it's not only that, it's just the dynamics of who you're sending out to the mat that makes this fun as well, because you know that there can be fireworks, and especially at 207 where really anything can happen. It could be a pin or be pinned situation on either side.
Oh, absolutely. And these ladies are pinners, a bunch of them. And it's going to be very exciting. I'd love to. We will have matches come down to the last weight or two. We will. We will come down to 207 at some matches. So, 180, 207, these top weights they're going to matter. I mean, the tone will be set by the lighter weights, but these matches will be finished off at the heavyweights.
All right, we got to go back to what we're talking about here. The McKendree versus Simon Fraser final in 2020. I'm still buzzing from this one. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. Let's just break this down on how every point absolutely matters. We brought up the 116-pound match. Carly Godinez-Gonzalez over Felicity Taylor, 8-0. You have Alexia Ward over Lauren Mason, 5-1. Lauren Mason scoring that 1 point gives Simon Fraser an additional point. Emma Bruntill over Nicole Deppa, 7-0. If she's able to get 3 more points, she gets that tech. Bullock at 170 pounds, she wins 9-0. So if she gets 1 point, or one way or the other, if Bullock gets another point, or if Trudel scores a point, that makes a difference. And then Cindy Kimber over Emily Q, 10-2. I remember that. When Q scored 2 points, it was a huge deal, because that's the difference between a 3-1 versus a 4-0 if she gets the tech. So if you don't think every single point, everything you do on that mat matters, especially in those high-level matches as you get into the semis and to the finals. Of course, it matters all the time, but scoring points matters, and I think that's a neat concept of freestyle team scoring.
Yeah, I mean, it's borderline a perfect product right now with the format. Maybe we can fix grounding on the edge or something, but for the most part, the rules are great. The format's great. The team scoring's great. It's just very exciting stuff. And we will be having somewhat of a discussion like this about a match or two at least that happened this tournament along the way, whether it's the finals or the semi. There is going to be matches in some of these divisions that points matter, and again, if you're the athlete, you could walk off a match, lose 10-1 and be mobbed by your team. And
But
it's exciting.
think about that conceptually. 10-1 is a 2-point team difference if you don't give up a tech.
Yeah.
That's monumental. And
Yeah.
1-0 is different than 2-1 because it's
Yes.
3 points for your team or 3-1 for the other team. So
It's massive. They all matter. Everything matters. And this is incumbent, and this is where you see, and the ladies are really good at this, much better than the guys, the team supporting each other, really being into it. And then the coach also, empowering each athlete. Your point matters. You got to go out there, fight, because it matters for the team score.
one of the lasting memories I will have is, of course, the 2024 National Duals that was won by Iowa. They won they won 4 matches, and North Central won 6. But as we talked about, it came down to that activity clock where Iowa got an activity clock and it ended up being the 21-20. But I wish I had a camera on Gary Maya, because as soon as he saw that activity clock point, he did a fist in the air like that because he knew what that meant. He knew that was an additional team point. So Gary, of course, is so buttoned up on the rules and understanding what's happening there. But he was so excited because he knew what that meant. He knew it probably wasn't going to be a tech or a fall that late in the match. And that was everything. So getting that activity clock point and scoring that point for JC Feller against Treya Haynes, who ended up winning the match, that ended up deciding it for the University of Iowa.
Absolutely. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. You win 4 or 10 matches and you win. But they all mattered. The points along the way did. And yeah, like you're saying, like Gary's sitting there, like calculating everything and thinking so far forward and every permutation, like what do we need? What do we need? And yeah, he knew they needed that. They needed that point by JC, and they got it.
And that was Clarissa's comment afterward, is that every member of that Iowa team scored points for the team. So even in the 6 losses, they scored points.
And in the case of like the first match, Sterling Diaz won 11-0 tech. She didn't give up a point, along the way to that tech. So not just scoring them, but also being stingy and giving them up, or you're getting a 2-0 shutout as opposed to 2-1, like you're saying, where you're not giving that 3-1 win as opposed to 3-0. I mean, those points all matter. That's what the beauty is.
NWCA National Duals, January 9th and 10th. Make sure you tune in. This is a national championship. This is what it's all about. 10 versus 10. You have 3 divisions. Division 3, you have the All NCAA division, and then you have NAIA. There are going to be some exciting developments. We know that for sure. Who's going to be on the mat? Even some of the teams that may not be contending, who we're going to see some superstars. Maybe you have some of those superstar matchups on the backside that we weren't expecting that can be fun too, just like a Cristel Rodriguez coming in and doing well, or just you don't know who you're going to get at different times. So that's also fun.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it does a couple of things too. I mean, obviously, results can and will matter for seeding down the road, but also, some of these people don't hit each other necessarily. And if you have people that are going to be contending, whether it's going to be to be an All-American, make the national finals, whatever it is, you can, you get a litmus test of what you need to work on, where you stand. You get your benchmarking here, and there's enough time in the rest of the season to work on things and see what you're doing right and wrong. So, people may think they're a certain place they can compete with somebody, or and then things they've worked on or haven't worked on or need to work on, you just learn a lot. This is just a great scorecard, not, in terms of the actual teams that win, but for the individual athletes to see where they measure up at the moment, later on in the season.
And then you just get a precursor. They won't wrestle at the national duels because they're in different divisions. But then a few days later, you can have North Central versus Life University on FloWrestling Night in America, January 15th. So
nice.
Remember the storyline last year was which was the second best team in the country, North Central or Life. It's not the same lineups. can't really settle it that way, but I'm glad that they had the foresight to do that. So that's going to be in Marietta, Georgia. So that's one to get excited about too. So this is the heart of the season. This is where you get into some
Yep.
duels and you get into the first sanctioned NCAA championship for women's wrestling. So just a lot of things exciting as we make that final push toward history.
Yeah, it's a lot to watch. There's going to be a lot to process and a lot to dissect after, but let's bring it on.